Hi guys, welcome to another tactical video. This one's going to be about the potential third troop choice in the Space Marine Codex, and that is the bikes. Now, bikes were always pretty good. In 5th edition they were tough, etc. A lot of options. In 6th edition they got a lot better. And in the new Codex, the new Space Marine Codex, they got cheaper and a few more options. So basically what was good is now great, and thus these are a lot more popular these days. So you've probably seen guys using these a lot. You probably have an idea of how to use them already. So I'm basically going to go into what I like to use with them, why, what kind of chapter tactics, that kind of thing. So yeah, here we go. Basically, even though there's a squad of 5 here, my favourite thing to do when I'm taking these as troops is basically go for the full-size squad. So that includes the attack bike, and I give it a multi-melter because, as you can see, I have a melter there, I have a melter on this guy that you can't quite see yet, there, and the sergeant has a combi melter, which you can now see. So, because of that, these guys are purely geared for tank hunting. Now, I used to run a squad which is basically the full-size bike squad, multi-melter attack bike, the 2 melter guns, the combi melter, melter bombs, and that unit was 300 points. And do you know what? It was well worth it. It was worth every single point. Now, for the exact same kind of performance as before, it's only 268 points. So, that's quite a big saving. 32 points there, that's almost another Rhino in my army. So because of that, it's even more efficient to run these guys. So what does bike do? Just very briefly, basically a bike works as a tactical marine, but designed for aggressive maneuvers, that kind of thing. So you get your bolter, but it's twin linked. You still get your free up save. You get 12-inch movement, plus potential 24-inch boost in the shooting phase instead of shooting. Okay, you still get your frag and crack grenades. You still get your base stats. You're now toughness 5 instead of toughness 4, so you're far more immune to a lot of weapons. Excuse me. You can take more than one special weapon in the squad. The sergeant's pretty much the same. And also you get cover saves just for moving. That is of course boosted with turbo boosting. So, the other thing is that when you're fleeing from assault, you get to move faster, which can really save your ass sometimes. The other final thing is that you get Hammer of Wrath on the turn you charge. So that's quite nice to get. So all those boosts, and basically they're very cheap for that. The main strength of the bikes is that things that would work very effectively against most Space Marines, high strength, low shot, low AP kind of weaponry, is much less effective against these guys because they're getting that cover save, they're high toughness, they're much more manoeuvrable, so they can get into things, hide out of sight, that kind of thing. But weight of fire is still, weight of fire has a lessened effect because they're toughness 5, which is nice, but it still kills them fairly easily, so that's probably their biggest threat, is weight of fire, that kind of thing. So despite that, if you kind of go into a game and assume that the bikes are probably going to be targeted because they are a threat, and they're probably going to die, then you can have no fear in using them, because you should know no fear being a Space Marine. And that is basically you go all out aggressiveness. As you can see, these guys are designed for tank hunting, and that is what they'll do. They'll go for the nastiest tank they can, or any other tanks in their way, and just cause a complete nuisance. Go forward and blast tanks. It's the kind of thing where your opponent has to deal with it, or suddenly he's lost a lot of manoeuvrability, he's lost a lot of options, and he's lost a lot of firepower. And so they'll target the bikes. But 268 points, small amount to pay for that kind of thing when the rest of your army can literally run amok. So it's basically a hard target to present your opponent, and they'll know that. It's something they cannot afford to ignore. Now, the bolters on the front are actually very effective because, you know, they work as a regular bolter, but of course they're twin linked, so you're much more accurate, you're going to do more damage. It's very nice, but obviously it has a kind of clash of roles with the guys with the melter guns. Now bear in mind that the guys with the melter guns still have their bolters on the bike, so in that sense you're getting a bit more versatility than you would normally. They're not dependent on a transport, which is a huge bonus for you, because it means that, you know, if you take a bad lucky shot on a rhino or something, then suddenly they're not stranded in the middle with these short range melter guns. They can still get into range pretty easily. They're also relentless, which I forgot to mention before, which means they can use their rapid fire bolters and then charge in as well. The one kind of drawback with bikes is that if you go through difficult terrain, you're not slowed down at all, which is a good thing, but you take a dangerous terrain test on every single model. If you roll a 1, you know, you have to pass an armor save. Now if you're like me, you will never pass that armor save, so you pretty much kill your own model. However, it still shouldn't hold you back from manoeuvring where you need to. Not being slowed down is a massive bonus. It means you can just charge straight through cover. You can go anywhere you need to get to your target, and just do it. You know, so what? You lose a couple of bikes, big deal. You know, you still got those crack grenades there. If you're losing melters, you still got the melter bombs on the sergeant. You know, that kind of thing. So you can still be effective, and you shouldn't let that dissuade you from doing those kind of movements. So apart from that, bikes is pretty much all good. Now, as for actually running them, now you know my squad, but what I do occasionally is actually combat squad them, because I have that option. And I will put all the guys with the bolters, so I'll actually split them so you can see. I'll put all the guys with the bolters in one, and all the guys with the melters in the other. So what that means is, I'll have the 2 melter guns, okay, the attack bike with multi-melter in this squad. And here I'll have all the guys with bolters, but I'll also put the sergeant with the combi melter and the melter bombs in that squad, and I'll have a normal guy without any kind of upgrades at the front of that squad, so he'll die first. It's an ablative wound. Now you may be wondering, why would you do that? Well, basically I know I'm going to lose at least one bike here, usually more than one, on the way in. And that means it'll be a guy without any kind of upgrades, because he'll die first. And then, you know, it keeps that squad a lot stronger. This squad will always be seen as the threat because it's got so much melter potential. However, this squad is still a threat to vehicles because it's got a combi melter and a melter bomb that can go in at the same time. And also, this is the biggest squad, so you've still got more bikes in there, and they're scoring, so they'll stay alive longer because they're shooting at these. They can still do the same job. They can even go for different targets, so you get a lot more options that way. Everything can hunt the tanks, and if I do need to particularly go for infantry, then these guys can do it. You know, everything's scoring, so that's brilliant. Now, obviously you need either a captain on a bike or a chapter master on a bike to unlock these guys as troops. So, I usually take a captain on a bike, and you know, I will put the captain in one of the squads and then put them in this squad. And as it currently goes, she is a complete tank, so I put her at the front. Tanks all the wounds for the squad, keeps them alive longer so they can do more damage. These guys tend to survive long enough to actually kill some tanks at least, so they still do their job, but it's kind of like a bit of a bait and switch, so people are like, whoa, huge melter guns, gonna blow up my Land Raider, must kill them, while these guys just come up and do the exact same thing. So, you know, pretty good. Other options you could give them is plasma guns. I'd say no to the plasma guns because basically you have a much higher chance of killing yourself, and you really don't want to do that on your special weapons if you can help it. The other thing is that I honestly don't find plasma that effective, and it doesn't really gel too well with the rest of it. I mean, you can make the unit to hunt infantry, but there's better ways of doing it because of their speed, and that better way of doing it is basically flamers. You can put flamers on the squad, and suddenly they're actually quite nasty. If I was going to do that, I'd probably run a smaller squad of 5, so they're still scoring. They're seen as less of a threat, and they can maneuver around, clearing objectives in the midfield, and then boosting off for line breaker or contesting or seizing an objective in the opponent's deployment zone, while the rest of your troops have been moving up and getting the midfield that they've cleared. So, a bit of synergy, and they're quite effective. The other thing, of course, is the new grav guns. Now, grav guns are very nice on bikes because, of course, bikes are relentless. So you're firing at the full 18-inch range. You're doing quite a bit. And, of course, you still have those twin-link bolters there that can deal with targets without an armour save. So you're getting the best of both worlds. Now, they are more expensive than melt guns, but they're quite effective. Now, it does make them a lot more of a target. So if you're going to do that, then I would say take a couple of extra bites, maybe about 7 or so, and run a big squad. So you have a lot more ablative wounds and stuff, and these guys can hunt the monstrous creatures as they see fit. Now, personally, I think there's better places to put the grav guns than the actual troops choice. But, if you know you're going to be facing high armour enemies, there are worse choices to take. So grav guns are very effective, so definitely worth considering. But my personal favourite for overall cost of the unit, effectiveness of the roll and stuff, is to take the melters here, because they're very, very deadly to things. And even like monstrous creatures, they will have an easy time dealing with. Light tanks, of course, shock heavy infantry like Terminators and things will seriously think twice about having to come near these bikes because they're just going to be there. Now, there is, of course, the option that you don't take any upgrades at all. While I wouldn't particularly advise this, it's not a terrible idea because you're still getting the twin bolters. You could take a huge squad, and they're much less of a threat. But they can seize those objectives, contest, get line breaker, shoot things fairly effectively. And basically, you want to run those guys as harassment, pure harassment. If you find a unit that is basically affecting your kind of movements, for example, Tau Pathfinders, a big blob of Guardians or Dire Avengers, that kind of thing, that are basically pretty dangerous to you, but you can't really dedicate too much, or you really need them to stop. For some reason, you need them to stop focusing on the rest of your army. These guys can do that. These guys can get in there, shoot them, generally make a nuisance, charge them even if you need to, shoot and charge. Cause some casualties, stop them from shooting, that kind of thing. They have the speed to adjust to the rest of your army, and that's a huge bonus. Basically, the speed is the main thing you are going for with these bikes. Everything else is just gravy. So, well worth having some in your army if you can. Now, if you aren't taking a captain on a bike or a chapter master on a bike, so these can't be troops, then basically everything I have said is still applicable to them as a fast attack choice. And I would highly recommend at least having some bikes in your army because they are really that good. Maybe you don't like bikes, well, there's still plenty of options for you. But assuming you want to get the most out of your army, you could do a lot worse than looking at the Space Marine bikes. Now, the last thing I should cover is basically the Chapter Tactics 4 bikes. There are very few that are not effective. Probably the least effective one is the Imperial Fist Chapter Tactics, because obviously all your bolters are twin linked, so you're not really getting anything from it. There's no Devastators included in the squad, so you're not getting that bonus. But, they're still a nice complement to a Fist's army, so something to consider there. I'd say the best ones, everyone obviously knows this already, White Scars are a very good option. Excuse me. White Scars gives you hit and run +1 to your jink, and it gives you a higher strength hammer of wrath hit. So it means you can cause a lot more damage by shooting at full capacity, charging in, and then you can always escape combat. And getting locked in combat is usually these guys' biggest weakness, because then they're not shooting and they're not moving. So definitely something to consider. If you're going to charge these guys into a unit, make sure they can either kill it, or they need to hold it for a short while until something that can kill that unit gets in there, because otherwise these guys are going to get stuck. Now there are exceptions where you want them to be stuck. For example, you're facing a very strong gun line or something, and if you move, these guys are going to get shot to hell. Then yeah, by all means charge in. It'll save you a lot more, and you're still contesting objectives, etc., etc. So, you know, something to think about there. But yeah, having the white scarlet traits gives you a hell of a lot more options with the bikes, so very, very nice to have. The other thing is Iron Hands traits gives you the 6-up Feel No Pain, making these bikes even harder to kill. That is my probably slightly preferred one, because, you know, with careful placement, careful movement, that kind of thing, being locked in combat can be avoided. If you can't avoid it on these bikes, then you're not going to be able to avoid it on your other units. So, you know, something to consider there. But, you know, basically while they're being shot at, which is usually what will kill the bikes, if you're denying extra kills with that 6-up Feel No Pain, and chances are they'll get it because they're toughness 5, so very few things will deny that Feel No Pain, you know, it makes them a lot harder to kill, more frustrating for the opponent. You know, he's got to dedicate even more resources to them. So I like it that way personally. Now there's merits to all the others, of course. Ultramarines tactics make them more accurate, means they can reroll their assault distance, which is very nice. You know, salamanders with the melter guns, if you're taking Vulcan, very, very nice. Same with flamers, you know. 3 mastercrafted melter bombs on the sergeant. Pretty good. Now Raven Guard is the one, I would say, if you're running, well, Imperial Fists, they can be useful. With Raven Guard, I would say, don't even bother. It's not really worth taking the bikes. And the main reason for that is that you're not going to get any benefit from these bikes that you can't already get using your own chapter tactics or other units. So, because of that, I would say probably avoid them there. And that is pretty much the only one that I would say that with. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully this has been useful. I may have gone over a lot of basics here, but you know, most people are going to know how to run these already. But for those who don't or are thinking about them, best to consider all your options. About the grav guns, I know people are going to be like, why wouldn't you run grav guns on the bikes when they're relentless, you know, best place for them. Well, I'll explain why later. But as it is, I would say use these guys either as a big harassment unit, use them as objective sweepers with flamers, or use them as tank hunters, and that's my favourite role, but you know, you may already have things to deal with that pretty well. So yep, that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching. Feel free to comment or subscribe. I've finished with the Space Marines troops choices now, so I will probably go into elites next. So yep, see you again soon.